Dr. Chuang is a neurologist and a neurotrauma rehabilitation specialist. I'll let her introduce herself. She's also part of the CMT clinic team at Mass General. And we have some wonderful patients with us today, community members, and I will allow Dr. Chuang to introduce them. Thank you. Ken Hill? Ken Hill Jr.? Kenneth Hill Jr.? Are you here? Yes, please. We're putting you to work, sir. Take your time.
I may actually have to ask my helpers to introduce themselves a little bit because I just met them today. Just now, in fact. So my name is Kathy Chuang. I'm one of the neuromuscular neurology rehab specialists over at Mass General Hospital. And my job is to, along with Dr. Sayed Sajadi, Dr. Reza, try to help patients improve their quality of life with CMT. I work at the Spaulding Paralysis Center, work very closely with various physical therapists, occupational therapists, Ken Cornell and Cornell Orthotics, and hope that this presentation will be useful for some practical aspects of management with CMT. I'm going to have my lovely helpers introduce themselves. I apologize, I did not print out the blurbs that you had emailed me before, so take it away.
Hi, everyone. My name is Vittorio Ricci. I have CMT, and I help co-lead the Boston branch with my mom, Jill, back there. I was diagnosed about 10 years ago. Initially, it was an unknown type of CMT, but then partaking through some research studies, I was involved in the study that discovered the SORD mutation. So it's a newer type of CMT, and so that was about 5 years ago. And yeah, we can move on.
Thanks. Hi, I'm Julie Schell. I'm a branch leader for the Bucks County, Pennsylvania branch of the CMTA. I have CMT 1A. My mom is also here in the audience. So I just, I'm really committed and passionate about bringing our folks together in the area where I live and helping everyone feel like they have someone that's on their side and can offer tips and tricks to each other about how to get through life with CMT. And I'm looking forward to participating.
Hello, everyone. I'm Kenneth Hill. I'm the owner of US Hapkido Alliance, a martial arts school. I was diagnosed with CMT in my early 30s. Doctors thought that I just had bad ankles from martial arts. But then I found out the reason why I have bad ankles is from CMT. But my school specializes in teaching special needs students, and it's been a blast. And Dr. Shearer tells me, it's a reason why I'm doing so well, because I've always stayed active even when I had difficulties. So that's what I always encourage people to do.
Awesome, and hopefully we're going to keep people active here today. So if someone, I don't know how to bring up the slides either. This is a very well-rehearsed and dynamic presentation. Do I press the slides aren't even up, so I'm assuming the slides have to come up before I advance them. While they're bringing the slides up, because these presentations always go completely smoothly, I have to caveat this with every patient, every person with CMT is obviously different. So while I'm going to point out some general things to focus on and things that you can bring up to your care team, whether it be an MD, a DO, physiatrist, PT, OT, orthotist, whatever. It may not exactly pertain to you, but I hope at least it'll open up some questions and allow you to open up a conversation about how you can make your life a little bit better. I have no disclosures, but I work in the MGH Center for Excellence in CMT, so those are the people that I go to. And broadly, the presentation's kind of going to go through PT goals, so basically like legs in general, and gait and function. Then we'll go through a couple of OT goals and arm and hand function. And lastly, we'll talk a little bit about gear that patients have told me have been really useful for themselves. And so I always filter out the bad information and kind of pass along the good information. So I hope you guys will find them useful. I will touch a little bit about surgeries. Being a physiatrist, we try to avoid surgery whenever possible, but when we have to, we will talk to patients about it and point out some ideas about when we actually think about surgery and when we actually don't think about surgery. I think we're gonna go this slideless, which is fine because we'll just do this like I would do in clinic. So starting off with goals of managing CMT. The main thing that you all have realized is that you cannot spend your entire life stretching, doing exercises, timing all of your medications all together at once. You are busy, you have other things to do. So your priorities should depend on your own daily life. If I tell you to wear night splints at night in order to prevent Achilles heel contracture, it is really uncomfortable to wear night splints on both feet at night, especially if you don't lie on your back and sleep on your back. So every patient management decision has to come from a discussion with you and hopefully a provider who's interested in what you're talking about. For the general idea of managing patients in CMT, we want to try to start with the easiest goal, the low-hanging fruit, and then kind of work upwards depending on the amount of effort and ability that you can use in order to put into your focus on function. The main things to worry about are 1, contracture prevention. I'll talk about that. 2, trying to prevent falls and secondary injury. 3, trying to maintain your strength. And 4, trying to be able to function in both your vocational and avocational, so job-related and things that you like to do in life, and do it in a way that makes your life meaningful. The lowest hanging fruit of all of this, honestly, is contracture prevention. So if there's one thing that I would ask you guys to do is to focus. Most patients have weakness in the ankles, which leads to secondary changes in the joints. So if there's one thing most patients with CMT should do, especially initially at the beginning of diagnosis of the disease, is to try to make sure they maintain range of motion, their functions in their ankles. I have had patients literally coming in, walking on their side of their ankle, and the only way to correct it at that point is surgery. And we're trying to prevent that. Other reasons why we want to prevent ankle, I'm gonna move this a little bit away and not fall off. Other reasons why we want to prevent ankle contractures are because of 1, foot pain. If your foot is pointed downwards, you can tell that that means that either pressure from your body is going to wind up in the ball of your foot or go straight into your knee, okay? So if your Achilles is tight, you're at a much higher risk of developing foot and knee pain. And then second thing is that when you're trying to get up from a chair or walk down stairs, it's much harder to get up with an ankle contracture because you can't put your feet in under you. You have to put your foot in out in front. And so getting up from a chair becomes that much more difficult to do. Those of you who have braces know how hard it is to get up when your ankle is locked at 90 degrees. Just imagine if it's locked at 120 degrees. So we have to prevent that. That's probably the lowest hanging fruit for most people with CMT. So, and for my panelists, if you have any things to add, please feel free to speak up at any time. You all have,
Kathy, your slides are almost ready. I'm so sorry.
It's okay. I think I can kind of wing this up. So if I could have at least one of you guys stand up and we can kind of demonstrate some ankle stretches. Thank you. Come around. Yeah, come around. We'll get out the chair out of the way. So the basic ankle stretch is a front lunge where basically you want to put a little bit of stretch in the back, and notice how he's got his heel on the ground. So when you stretch your Achilles, there's two things. One, you should try to stretch it with the, you're going to try and stretch with the knee straight. That actually stretches out the gastroc, the more superficial muscles or the muscles that are closer to the surface. And then you also want to stretch with the knee bent a little bit. That gets the deeper toe flexors and the inverters, okay? For those of you who have trouble doing that, just a front lunge, you can do this against the wall. So if Vittorio had a wall in front of him, which he doesn't, he'd put his hands against the wall to help him balance and kind of push his hips a little bit forward. There are slant boards or ankle rockers that can help you do them. Make sure that you hold onto a wall so you don't lose your balance. And then for a modification, for those of you who have a slight roll in of the ankle, they call it equinovarus deformity. You can turn your foot out to the side and try to stretch the inside of the ankle a little bit more. Kind of like how Vittorio is doing it. So that's one thing that you can do. And I would recommend putting this into your routine at least morning and night while you're brushing your teeth. You're supposed to brush your teeth for 2 minutes, 30 seconds each quadrant, right? So you might as well do 30 seconds of stretching each side twice. That at least gets you morning and night, and if you can throw some stuff in between, that would be great. My job is not to make your life harder. My job is to try and make this a little bit more routine and a little bit easier. If you have a slant board, awesome. If not, you can do without it. If you have braces, they will automatically help align your foot. So it's good to try to put them on because it will automatically correct your weight line a little bit. If you are very gung-ho, you can use those braces or get resting night splints at night. I can tell you from experience wearing splints at night, if you put them on, most likely in the middle of the night, they'll wind up coming off at some point. And again, it's really hard to use 2 resting night splints at the same time. If you have trouble standing up, you can use TheraBands. We don't have any bands today to either just pull the toes up or pull the toes out to the side. That is a way to do it, but body weight is generally a little bit easier than just pulling on things. All right, thank you, Victoria. We will have you guys come up. Do you guys have any other questions about, or any things you want to add about contractures in the ankles specifically?
Sort of.
Okay, go for it. Panel.
Well, my family always says they don't know what I am because it kind of works opposite for me. Like those I cannot do before I work out. I have to do them after because when I loosen all that up, I'm so unstable that it's more dangerous for me. So I found with me, I can do those really well after, but if I do them before, I should just skip the workout because it's just unsafe for me.
Yeah, so as I said, all of these are suggestions that bring up an idea that you might want to discuss, but they are definitely not a hard line. Everyone's a little bit different, okay? Other contractures that you should worry about, especially if you are spending more time in a wheelchair, are contractures of the hips and of the knee. So basically, difficulties with straightening out the knee or difficulty straightening out the hip. And why you should be worried about those are, one, if you're constantly bent at the knee and bent at the hip, it's harder to fall asleep, right? Because you lay on your back, you need pillows underneath your knees, you need pillows underneath your head. You basically need to sleep in a recliner. Other things that you might not think of it, if you try to stand and you have the hip and knee flexion contractures, you're kind of stuck in this position, so you're automatically more at risk for falls. Better alignment means better balance. So if you're kind of wheelchair bound, it is difficult to stretch by yourself. That's true. One thing you could do is, if you are safe, go over to the edge of the bed and just try and let the leg hang down a little bit off the edge of the bed while the rest of your body is there. That'll stretch out the hips a little bit. Or if you're trying to stretch out the hamstrings, or the knees, the first thing is to try to get your knees straight in a sitting position. So that's your standard, like sit in bed, try and do your best to touch your toes. Obviously, it's going to take a while. It's hard to do for certain. But over time, most contractures, awesome, my slides, can be prevented and or helped by gentle stretching exercises. We'll go through some shoulder exercises later with the upper extremity. Ha ha ha. Yes. Oh, and then I didn't even mention the cardiovascular and psychiatric effects of trying to stay active as well. So we got through that. All right. Now, you've loosened up your legs, or you're going to loosen your legs after. What sort of things can you do in order to help gait and balance for those of you guys who are mobile? If your ankle has weakness, the ankle has a lot of degrees of motion, right? The knee itself is just a hinge joint. It only goes back and forth for the most part. So every bit of that degree of freedom from the ankle translates to the hips. We know that if you walk in a ski boot or if you walk in high heels, your hips tend to sway more, right? That's the idea of wearing high heels. So it's true. Other than getting your heels up from the garbage, it's true. So if you want to be able to keep your balance with a weak ankle, your core and hip needs to be really strong. Now, when I say core, a lot of people think abs. So they'll do ab crunches all day. It's great exercise. You get a strong ab. But honestly, most patients with CMT have really strong hip flexors and core already because you're walking around looking at your feet because you don't want to trip and fall, right? So when I say core, I don't mean the flexion movements, which you're trying to stretch out, by the way. We're actually thinking of the back extensors and the hip abductors. So we're going to show you a couple of exercises here. I don't know who wants to help demonstrate like a side lying leg lift or a clamshell. Awesome. So we have Julie, and we don't have a flat space. Yeah, it's going to challenge your balance even more. All right, we can do it over there. Yeah, so one of the basic exercises to do is a clamshell exercise, which is one of the easier hip abduction exercise, but it's not quite as functional. I'll tell you why. So notice that Julie has her hips perpendicular to the ground. That's the most important thing, because the majority of people, because they want to do more, start opening up so that the hips are pelvis is kind of pointing to the ceiling. And if your pelvis is pointing to the ceiling, then you're actually not working your hips anymore. You're kind of starting to work your abs, which we know are strong, or the hip flexors, which we know are strong. So we want those hips perpendicular to the ground. She's going to raise her knee to the ceiling and then come back down, trying to keep those hips perpendicular to the ground. Okay, and then the other exercise is a side lying leg lift. So we're going to have your legs completely straight. The heels are going to wind up behind the butt so that you're kind of mimicking a walking motion. And then she's going to raise her entire top leg towards the ceiling, kind of with the leg back. You're cheating a bit. There you go. And then down and up and down. Notice how easy it is to cheat. You want to use your hip flexor instead of the abductors. All right. Thank you very much, Julie. Sorry for making you come on the ground. And the reason I give these two exercises is twofold. One, the clamshells are easier, and it's harder to cheat on the clamshell because if you have your hips and legs bent, then it's harder to open up to the ceiling. But when you stand on one leg and you're trying to take a step forward, this is kind of, if you imagine me side lying like Julie was, the exact position that Julie was in with the side lying leg lifts. So, but it's much easier to cheat, right? So I usually say start off with the clamshells, make sure that you're able to do them with a stable pelvis first. If those are easy for you, go on to the side-lying leg lifts and then go that way, because that is the way that you're going to stabilize your hip while one leg is on the floor, okay? You can always throw in bands if those are too easy too. They usually, or like an ankle weight, they're easy to find on Amazon. So we're trying to get our gait to go from looking at the ground, taking short steps, to standing up straighter and taking more long steps and not wasting as much energy on it. So with most forms of CMT, because of the fear of falling, you tend to take shorter steps. It makes sense. You want less or more contact with the ground, less time off the ground. But because of that, the back extensors that allow you to take a longer stride get weak. Oftentimes, you'll see people flex at the hip, which again, you should be stretching. So if you were to have some bracing to help with the stability so that you're not afraid of falling, after that, what you would like to do, or even before, so that it'll be useful, is to strengthen the ability to extend the hip so that you're able to take that long step and able to push your hips a little bit forward so you're not hunched over all the time. So I'll have, I guess, Ken, because you're the next one. I don't know how you're doing with the bridges. Gonna get some hip bridges, some glute extension exercises. Well, actually, let's see. Can you get on the ground and then come back up, you think?
In what way?
With a chair in order to...
With the chair on the ground, come back up?
Yeah, so I basically want you to kind of lie on your back and then push the pelvis to the ceiling. Let's try it. Do you think you can get on the ground? Let's try it. This is gonna be fun. All right, so the first one, we're gonna have him put his feet on the ground. Before you get to a full bridge, one thing you can do is just roll your pelvis forward so that you're kind of tucking your tailbone in. So you can do that lying down on the ground. So like just bring, yeah. So keep the knees together. And then try to get the low back on the ground. There you go. And relax. So not only is he tightening the core, but there should be a little bit of glute activation too. Now, try to kind of get the low back on the ground and gently lift your butt off the ground just a little bit. And then back down. And then back up. Good, and down. See, he's already getting more clearance. Try to come up a little bit more. There you go, and down. And then up and down, okay? And now try to go as high as you can and hold it. You may cramp a little bit. If you cramp, you can kind of roll back down again. Yeah, beautiful. And he's got really loose hips, and down. You got it. So that is a hip bridge. It's one of the basic exercises for hip extension strength. You did an excellent job. I'm gonna help you get back up.
Oh, no, I usually can't. Thank you.
Okay. It was weird. Careful with your head right there. Okay.
Oh, I got a hard hit.
All right, thank you.
Oh,
But that is your standard hip bridge in order to work on hip extension strength. Basically, you're trying to put a little bit of weight on the glute so that when you're standing, you're able to hold your body weight forward like this. Those are probably the basic exercises. Stretching, either clamshells or side-lying leg lifts. You can also do leg lifts standing up. They're just a bit easier because gravity is kind of helping you there. And the bridges. So those are the ones that I generally say, if you can fit them in to your schedule, stretching every day, but the exercise is 3 to 4 times a week. At least you know you're doing something and it's good for you. There are some more higher level exercises that can also help maintain core and balance a little bit more. So if you want to promote alignment, one thing you can consider doing is a plank. I don't know if either of you guys want to do a plank for me. Exactly. So in a plank, generally there are different versions. Most people cannot do the full push-up position, so you can totally do it on your elbows, and you can do it on your knees. Okay, so you can start off like this. And as you can see, with the plank, you're going to be focusing on getting the full alignment and also squeezing that butt so that everything's a little bit straight. If you can go up onto your toes, which makes it harder. And then you'll feel your core and your glute engage more. And if you're even stronger than that, you can even come on your hands. Okay. So depending on what you can do that for, thank you very much. I know that gets tiring after a bit. You can keep going. You can hold that for 10 seconds, 15 seconds, but that also promotes that standing up straightening. Things that you can do in order to do this without doing mind-numbing exercises every day, you can consider doing things like CMT yoga. There's a lovely woman with CMT2A, I think her name is Julie as well, who's got the website's going to be on the slides which are given to you, who has YouTube videos. There's the All Bodies community and the, oh, awesome. I have been sending your links to all of my patients because it's a great way of maintaining strength, balance, agility, and she's a great role model for everyone. It's the All Bodies community and I'm blanking. The other one is CMT Defy, right. YouTube videos that are available online, and she starts with some great, you could start off with chair yoga, so you can actually do it in a chair. You don't need to actually do those crazy planks that we were having. And then she also has ridiculous side plank holds and things that are like much higher level as well. But other things you can consider are also Tai Chi martial arts, like Aikido. Obviously, you have to modify. But if you're going to do any activity, and the recommendations are 150 minutes of moderate aerobic exercise a week. You can break that up into 5, 10, 20, 30-minute chunks of activity, but try and get that in for a week. So you could do 5-minute chunks 30 times a week, which is a little bit much, but you can do a little bit of a walk, or 30-minute 5, or something a little bit higher. But find something that you love. Some patients love biking. Some patients love adaptive sports. You should check out adaptive sports things in your area. Just Google adaptive sports if you're not around here. If you are here, then Spalding has great adaptive sports clinics. Find something that you love and just make sure, hey, are you strengthening those lateral muscles, that hip and hip extension and abduction? Because if you're not, you should probably add those on, okay? So find something that you love and then see if it's missing the components that you need, and then see if you can add those in as well. That's it for my spiel on the legs. Do you guys have any suggestions or ideas on top of that?
I had a question. I was sharing with the doctor before this session that at our CMT walk a couple weeks ago, I rolled my ankle really badly, stepping on a walnut shell on the path, and totally landed on my face. It was a great moment. But do you have any suggestions for good ways to strengthen the ankle to whatever extent we can?
Yes. So usually, if you're already having significant ankle weakness from CMT, that's kind of like the cherry on top of the sundae. So you're not going to get as much bang for your buck, which is why I didn't mention it here, but you can still get some improvement if there's disuse atrophy. But if you've had an injury like that where you roll the ankle and you want to see if you can get it better, the first thing you should do is try to maintain the range of motion of that ankle. So you can do the lovely write the alphabet with your ankle, at least with your toes at the beginning. And then once the pain has kind of subsided, the most standard thing to do is to use the TheraBands. So you can use elastic bands. You can get them, or like the elastic straps, you can buy them online at Amazon, and then pull up and pull out to the side. You can loop it around the band around your other foot so that you can pull up out to the side. Those are the best strengthening exercises after ankle, rolling your ankle. And then you can start challenging your balance a little bit by maybe having a hand on the wall and standing on one leg, because have decent balance, and kind of holding it and then putting it down and kind of getting it stronger that way too. Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Anything from the panelists otherwise for the legs that you found useful other than gear? I've got a whole section on gear at the end.
No, this was cool because I learned some things, and like I said, even though that was weird, I understand what you were saying, and I could feel what you were talking about. And the only other thing I emphasize with everyone is to breathe. So many people just hold their breath and they make it more difficult than what it is. Just don't forget to breathe.
Breathing is important, and when you get that moderate aerobic exercise, you should breathe during it and just enjoy the sensation of breathing, because it's so important. 100%. All right, moving on to the arms. I guess yes. We'll talk about insoles and proper footwear and hiking poles a little bit later on in the gear section. But if you're getting fatigued when you're walking, or if you're having frequent ankle rolls, you might want to consider getting bracing so that you have it for those longer strides where you get tired at the end. It doesn't mean, if you have braces, it doesn't mean you wear them all the time. And if you have like a rollout or a frequent ankle sprain, having an insole that fights that. So to correct pronation or to correct supination and promote pronation can be useful. And then the main thing is to make it part of your activities of daily living. All right, for OT, we want to prevent contracture as well. Now, the nice thing is that because you don't have your body weight behind you, usually the joint deformity doesn't get to the point as much in the legs as you do for the arm. The most common contractures that you get in the hands are the swan neck deformities or the claw hand deformities. If you want to prevent that early, fashionably, there are these lovely ring splints that you can get, that some of them are very nice. They're kind of like figure 8 ring splints that you can put on, almost like a long ring. They have some very nice designer silver ones on Etsy and even on Amazon. Or you can talk to your OT about ring splints, and that can at least help maintain a little bit of range of motion of the ankles, or of the hands, of the fingers. For the hands, the majority of us use our hands so much in daily activities of daily living that you don't get much disuse atrophy of the hands. Most of it's from the neuropathy itself. But if you want to prevent disuse atrophy as much as possible, you can go onto Amazon and get stuff like TheraPutty. TheraPutty is a great bunch of 4 different putties that are elastic, and you can form like rings and balls out of them. And it actually usually comes with a handout of exercises, the ones from Flint Rehab, where you could just choose 2 or 3 exercises a day. And I just tell my patients, look, you're busy. You don't want to take 30 minutes out of your day doing hand exercises. Just use it as a stress ball or stress reliever. So use it as a fidget ball. If you're just like bored and you're sitting and listening to this lecture, you can be like just squeezing the TheraPutty in your hand, and at least that'll prevent a little bit of the disuse atrophy. When you think about surgery for the hand, there is one corrective surgery for the hand that I think actually has helped a lot of patients with CMT who have this particular weakness. If you cannot lift your thumb from your palm, so that you cannot get your thumb around an object like a bottle, you kind of have to like put the bottle here and wedge it over and then come around. There is a procedure that's used in patients with severe carpal tunnel syndrome. So there's actually a decent number of papers about the functional benefits of it that can restore. It's called an opponentsplasty, where you can bring your thumb up. It's not going to make the thumb ridiculously strong, but allows you to open up your thumb so that you can come around. And then, because usually for most patients, that thumb joint and that second and third finger joints are really strong, you can do this again. So it's called an opponentsplasty. Some people are lucky enough to have this residual tendon when you bend your wrist called a palmaris that doesn't do anything other than tighten the skin of your palm. And sometimes if you have that, they can actually root that tendon over to the thumb to raise it up. If you don't have that tendon, they can sometimes use a different tendon like the brachioradialis or one of the forearm to do a tendon transfer. So that's one thing you can consider. Usually you only consider it if you're having difficulty lifting your thumb up because it's not going to give you a really strong, it's just going to allow you to get your thumb around. Lift it up from the hand or from the palm. If you want to try and see whether that would be useful for you, you can get an opponentsplasty splint that actually most OTs can make that puts your thumb in that position for a little bit, and just to see if you can actually have a grip with it. The issue with the splint itself and why people don't just do the splint and sometimes opt for surgery is because a splint is uncomfortable if you just imagine having your thumb stuck in that position for a prolonged period of time. But at least it could show you if that position of the thumb would be useful and you would have voluntary lift of that thumb. So that's one thing that might be useful, one surgical procedure that might be useful in a select group of patients with CMT. Otherwise, things that actually most normal people can, most people without CMT, the majority of anyone who sits in front of a desk or is on their phones all the time, it's really easy to develop that lovely hunched forward posture, which causes a lot of neck pain in the future. Also throws off your balance because your head is a bowling ball. It weighs like 10 pounds. So if you can just imagine a 10-pound bowling ball on top of your spine, bending you forward, it can cause a lot of pain, especially if you still have to look forward. So one good stretch to consider is a pec stretch. Sometimes you can take, you got that cane, so you've got that lovely there. If you just bring the cane over your head and just stretch behind your shoulders, would you do that for me? You can use this with a broomstick. That's a really nice pec stretch. If you don't have a cane or a broom or a long pole, you can just put your hand against a wall and push, and then you can stretch out your pecs a little bit. It feels good usually, okay, just to do that. And then another thing is if you're also prone to doing this and this, it's good to strengthen the neck extensor. So if you think about bringing your chin, keeping your head level, chin in, and you can feel the back of your neck open a little bit. That's also a really nice stretch to do. But that's just stuff you can probably throw in when you're feeling a little bit stiff, unless you're at risk of developing shoulder contractures. I think that's it in terms of like OT things. Anything else that you guys can think of for the hands other than gear?
Yeah, I could add in. I don't really have too much functional weakness in my hands, but I know that from like EKGs, there's a little bit there. And I was diagnosed when I was a kid, and one of the things I played guitar as a kid, they were like, that was probably really good, because not only is it really good for strengthening your hands, but you're building a lot of flexibility there. And so like that could have been one of the reasons why it hasn't really progressed too much there. So that's another thing. I think it's kind of like PT, but you're also learning another skill. So if you've ever had interested in learning some type of instrument, something like that, that's another really good way to essentially work PT and do a fun new skill.
Awesome. That actually brings in one thing that I want to make sure people know about in terms of positioning for keyboard ergonomics for both guitar playing, keyboard. Patients with CMT are often highly at risk for carpal tunnel syndrome. So make sure that when you are doing keyboarding or playing the guitar, that wrist is set either to neutral or slightly up to 20 degrees past neutral, because if you're in this position or this position for prolonged periods of time, it's really easy to develop carpal tunnel syndrome. So straight wrist. So if you're playing guitar, you don't want to curl your hands around there. You want to keep that wrist straight. Yeah, basically. Okay, so now the important part. This is all important. Let's do some gear. So there's so much gear out there that you might not even realize is applicable to you. But there are a lot of people who have trouble with their hands. We're going to start off with the hands because we're in the OT section. Patients with arthritis, rheumatoid arthritis, patients who've undergone hip replacements or stuff, they often have gear. So what I would do is to find a website. I use arthritissupplies.com. And they have a lovely search bar. And I just type in button or jar or, I don't know, something, zipper, kitchen, even kitchen. And then it pops up with a ton of useful stuff that people have used over the years. And they have star reviews too, which is great. Things that are particularly useful are button hooks. So if you're struggling with buttons, it's basically like a needle threader, but gigantic, so you can slide it through buttons. Jar openers, so trying to get one with a bigger handle that you can turn. A lot of patients with hand weakness actually get a pair of pocket pliers or Leathermans in order to help them pull tickets out. It's just a lot easier to do. And there's probably a bunch of other assistive devices that if you just search online for it, you'll find a lot of useful things. In terms of gait, one of the, obviously, fall prevention is key. You want to try and get rid of like slip carpets, things that could trip you up in the middle of the night. If you have a shower, it's good to have a grab bar or something to lean on, or even like a shower stool to prevent slips in the bathroom. One thing that's been very useful for my patients is now they have motion detecting lights that you can apply under the bed or in hallways, that when you get up to go to the bathroom in the middle of the night, a low light by your feet actually automatically lights up, and then you can walk to the bathroom without falling. So that's available on Amazon. For patients who have difficulty, who don't have difficulty with walking, want more of a workout with walking, and also to look cool, or who probably need one more point of support but don't really want to go to a cane, I recommend hiking sticks. They can come in pairs. You can get a great workout using them. They provide 2 points of contact for balance. You can oftentimes fold one and clip one to the other one, so you can have 1 point of balance as well. And then they also oftentimes have wrist loops, so that if you let go by accident, it's still attached to you. So there's hiking poles are oftentimes like a much more manageable thing to use other than a cane. Using a walker is completely reasonable. A lot of times you can use one that's collapsible. The only thing with the walker is that I would advise you to try to get up a little bit straighter. And if you have a walker, you might as well have one with the seat, right? If you're gonna use one, why have one that doesn't have a seat? And if you're thinking about motorized mobility, like a scooter or a wheelchair, it's better to start thinking about that process early, because trying to get approval through insurances, et cetera, can oftentimes take a year in order to get. So just starting the process or bringing it up early will probably save you trouble in the long run. Sometimes disability commissions of the state can actually help with funding for things like wheelchairs or ramps. You can look up disability resources in your state. There's also oftentimes equipment recycling programs. I know Massachusetts has a mass match program where if you're looking for, say, a walker, wheelchair, toilet seat, something like that. I don't know if you want to share a toilet seat, but anyway, you can just type in and see if there's anyone available, any place available to you that can send one to you for free. So look up the resources in your state. And I think a lot of disability equipment may have tax exempt. So just check your tax rules or talk to your to the person who helps, or I can't think of the word right now. Anyway, your tax consultant, just to see if you can get like reimbursements for some of the equipment that you use or some of the modifications that you might be useful in the future. I think, let me see, button hooks, portable pliers. There's some lovely cooking utensils. Theramans. Billy's shoes. So patients who have trouble getting shoes for braces, more recently they've developed shoes that actually zip open like a book. So they're very useful for patients who want to get into in a shoe and you don't want to slide your foot into them. So if you want to check it out, they have great sizing online. For patients who want kind of more waterproof options for bracing, unfortunately, we don't really have like stuff that's great for sand. I wish we would. So Ken, you need to devise something for that. But you can get cast covers or try rubber boots, or get like a cheaper plastic brace from Amazon when you're thinking about going in the water and you don't want to wreck the brace that is covered by insurance. That's expensive. Oh, and I actually heard this from a patient not that long ago that some people might find helpful. Nordstrom, apparently their owner's wife had 2 separate different size feet. So Nordstrom has a policy that if you need to buy shoes of different sizes, they will do it for you for free. You just need to ask. So a patient actually told me this. I tell you, I get all my best information from patients and I filter out the bad stuff. But both Billy's shoes and I think Nordstrom's has the ability to have different sized shoes. So you can always look at that as well. I think I'm right on time. Thumb brace, ring splints, jar openers. Talked about that. If you have limited mobility, you can do home-assisted devices like Home or Alexa to help you turn on the lights, set the thermostat, that sort of stuff. Or you can always get a home PT, OT assessment in order to help. So you can always talk to your doctor about getting home visiting nurse service just to have a PT or OT come in and assess your home for you. And there's some home modification resources there too. And that's basically it. I think it's pretty much right on time for questions.
I would like to start by sincerely apologizing to Dr. Twang for not having your slides. That was all me. And I was wondering all week what was going to be the thing that went wrong today. And we survived it. You rocked it. Thank you so much. But I sincerely apologize. I'm sure that messed you up, but it did not seem so to us. So thank you for being so gracious about that. And thank you to our panelists for helping. So we have had a ton of questions come in, and we're going to have to be very thoughtful with our time. So we're going to start with a couple questions in the room, and then we have a ton of questions on Zoom. So we'll go to our Zoom questions as well. So let me head over here at the speed of heat. Hang on.
Thank you. You mentioned lots of exercises for hands and legs. What about diaphragm?
Diaphragm, I think the main ones are getting that lovely blow bottle, unfortunately, and to pull in and out. Sometimes you can help by doing abdominal crunches or just intercostal muscles where you try to either do sit-ups or bear down. But in order to help get the supportive muscles around there. But truly, I think for the diaphragm muscle itself, the only thing is to get that blow bottle and to exercise it that way. I'm sorry, I wish I had some better options for that.
Yeah, a quick comment and then a question. A comment on with the hands, like opening doors and getting stuck in a restroom. And pulling the ticket out when going to Cambridge Street on the 8th floor to visit Mass General on neurology. I eventually would use a pair of pliers, and then finally occurred to me the rubber gloves that we had left over from the pandemic stick one in my back pocket. It will handle all situations because it gives you that extra grip and it's hidden. You can just have it in your back pocket. The question was, I was told to do exercise. You didn't talk about the balance exercises, standing up in a doorway with one foot in front of the other. Do they really help, or do the bridges and everything else you talk about, is that more helpful?
So it depends on whether you have the weakness versus having just balance difficulties. Usually the balance difficulties do come from weakness. And so that's why I focus on, if I'm going to do the 3 exercises, those are the 3 that I do. But if you have time during the day and you're willing to either stand in one foot in front of the other near a wall, or just to put your leg up, testing your balance is totally fine in a safe way. If you're able to do that easily, there are like Bosu balls or balance pads that you can stand on too. So it just depends on how much time you're willing to devote for it. And usually we want you to have the strength to be able to do those exercises before trying to do the exercises without the strength and failing. Does that make sense? So we want you to be able to have the strength to not like drop the hip out and fall before we have you exercise, before you have you balance.
Excellent information. So we're going to go to our Zoom questions, but one thing I wanted to mention is that in your bags, I don't know if you've had time to look through them, but we did give you a gripper thing item that helps with gripping things and opening things. So test it out and see what you think. Jeannie, can hold that up. There it is, right there in the front row. So look for that. It's not a floppy disk. It is a gripper thing.
There's also
okay, so we're going to go to the Zoom questions. Sarah Cater.
All right. Starting with our first question, is there any therapeutic benefit to wearing compression socks?
For the neuropathy itself, no. But if there's secondary swelling or skin changes, that would be beneficial for it. And if you're very immobile, in theory, you've got the risk of clotting. But the compression socks itself will not help the neuropathy, to my knowledge. But they might have secondary effects, like swelling is edema and swelling can be significant.
Thank you. The next question is about ankles that turn in a lot. And they wanted to know what exercises would be beneficial for ankles that are really turned in.
So number 1 would be the stretching. It depends on the degree of weakness. I'm assuming that weakness at that point can be pretty severe. So at that point, I would turn it over to our orthotist, Ken, in order to help. A lot of times you can do the TheraBand out exercises until the calves come home and not find a huge amount of benefit with the exercise at that point. And so you might need to think about secondary supportive options instead.
Thank you.
Thank you. The next question is about how to know whether you're having contractures.
So if you're having contractures, you're basically having a stiff joint. So you should be able, for patients with neuropathies in general, to at least get your ankle with your knee straight to 90 degrees, at least. For most people, it's actually 20 degrees past, but at the very least, you want to get to the 90 degrees. Your knees should be able to go completely straight when you're lying flat. When you're lying flat in bed, your hips should be able to go completely straight. And then you should be able, if in the shoulders, to roll your shoulders back so that your shoulders are in line and not just constantly flex forward. And then your hands, you can tell when you have contractures if you're not able to at least strain them out if you press them.
Thank you. The next question is about the exercises that you shared, if there's any modifications that can be done for people who use wheelchairs.
Yes. I couldn't do it for every population group. For the ankle stretches, I would probably use a belt or a loop or a towel in order to pull up. If you're in a wheelchair and you want to be able to work your glutes, the best way to do it is to probably work on sit to stands. So getting down, coming up, down, up. And then in a wheelchair, if you're already lying down in bed, to go to sleep. At that point, I'd probably roll on your side and use your sideline leg. All of these, there's always a ton of exercises that are available. So if you have any specific inability to do them, it might be good to talk with a physical therapist at least to help target it.
Thank you. The last question is about, I'm going to try to see how to paraphrase this. As a parent of a person with CMT, how can you tell when a person is overdoing it with their body?
Okay. Exercise can cause pain. So if you are not able to finish your activities of daily living, i.e., you work out so much you can't walk to the store, or you're working out so much that you can't do your dishes, then that's too much. You need to back away a little bit. And then the other thing is if you have excessive muscle soreness 2 days out from exercise is usually the standard. If standard physical therapy on land is too much, sometimes if you have access to aquatic physical therapy, that could be a good way to support muscles without causing as much stress on the muscles and joints. So that's an option for some people if it's available in your area.
Thank you. Laurel, do we have time for a couple more questions?
Sure, let's do one more Zoom and then one more in the room. So go ahead, Sarah Cater.
Okay. The next question is about managing CMT-related fatigue. Do you have any tips around that?
Yeah, well, it depends on what the fatigue is due to. If it's due to ambulation and walking, a lot of times orthotics, again, I'm going to defer to you, can help with that, like especially if you have a lot of fatigue with walking. If it's from sleep, things, it might be good to, if you wake up in the morning and don't feel refreshed, it might be good to get a sleep study and make sure that you don't have a secondary thing going on, like sleep apnea. There are energy conservation skills where you can work with, you have this much energy during the day. How do you batten forward one each into each group? And sometimes physical therapists can work on that with you if you mention it to them. And the last thing is being able to do a little bit more aerobic exercise can oftentimes improve energy levels. So under the guidance of hopefully a physical therapist or a trainer or something, just slowly increasing activity, like aerobic activity, might actually improve your energy. I don't have a perfect solution for any of these. I don't have a perfect solution for all of the things that might go wrong, but at least these are usually useful tips to think about.
Thank you. And I saw a hand back here. There it is. Okay. Last question, and then we are going to head to break.
Thank you very much. This has been extremely informative. My question is, I use the elliptical a half hour a day at 85% of my targeted heart rate. Is that too much?
That sounds amazing. So as long as you're able to, walk and do, grocery shopping and, do the rest of your activities, it's great. The thing with the elliptical is, again, it works with that straight line motion, the flexion and extension. So I would also say, try and do something in order to get the hip stability, that hip abduction strong as well. But I don't think it's hard to say whether something is too much without knowing what your fatigue level is afterwards.
I guess I'm concerned about the 150 minutes you mentioned.
Oh, that's a lower limit.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So it's not going to contribute to atrophy of the muscles by overuse?
No.
Okay.
Oh, that's one thing. So the nice thing about CMT, exercise can only harm you if you hurt yourself, as in falls or something like that. With muscular dystrophies, if you break down muscle, you can't build it back up. But with CMT, because the muscle itself is fine, you cannot cause more muscle atrophy by exercising too much. You can fatigue yourself out. Please don't fall or hurt yourself. But exercise, there's no contraindications to exercise in CMT.
Thank you so much, Dr. Twang, and thank you for our panelists for being here.